Support for Connecticut East This Week comes from the Connecticut Technology Council, presenting the 19th Annual Women in Innovation Awards, Tuesday, October 22nd in Branford, honouring outstanding women in the STEM fields. To learn more and to purchase tickets for the event, visit ct.org/Women of Innovation. Nutmeg Pharmacy, reminding you to get your flu, COVID and RSV vaccinations now to protect you and your loved ones. Visit us in Higganum, Moodus, Centrebrook, Taffill and New London, and at our website at nutmegpharmacy.com. And Media Here and Now, a full-service content creation agency producing video, audio, podcasts, and digital content for social media, online, and broadcast use for all types of businesses, organizations, and non-profits. Find out more at mediahereandnow.com. Looking after more than just our state birds, we talk to Audubon Connecticut about their work and 2 youth employment programs, junior forest techs and wildlife guards, that are inspiring tomorrow's conservationists. Plus, we take a look at other stories making the headlines from around the region. This is Connecticut East This Week. Hello, I'm Brian Scott Smith. There are many organisations doing great work looking after our natural world and the birds and wildlife that inhabit it. And despite human interference and invasion over the years into many habitats, it's also our responsibility to conserve and preserve these often fragile environments. One such organisation is Audubon Connecticut, who for more than 100 years, Audubon has embraced the mission of protecting birds and the places they need to thrive and survive, and helping Audubon Connecticut do that is a new generation of young conservationists who are part of 2 youth employment programs run by the non-profit called Junior Forest Techs and Wildlife Guards. I caught up with Glenn Somaji and Will Perrett of Audubon Connecticut to find out more about these youth programs and some of the other work they are doing in the state. Thanks for joining us on Connecticut East This Week.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us, Brian.
So we've probably heard, most of us know, of your organisation. You look after birds, but I think a lot of people, and I certainly am one of them, probably don't realise how much extra that you do by way of an organisation. And so I just wanted to touch upon a couple of things with both of you, and it involves young people, and that's something that it's great to see young people getting involved with your organization, because I think young people get such a bad rap that they're not interested in this, they're not interested in that, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Glenn, I wanted to kick off with you. Junior Forest Techs is a program that you look after. Tell us a little bit about that.
Our program originated in 2013 as a way to engage the local community and also to collect valuable data to enhance and update our forest management plan. So we typically we'll employ 6 to 8 local students from our surrounding VOAG schools throughout the summer.
Talk to us a little bit more about that, because when you say employ, what does that mean? Are you paying them? Give us the details about that.
We are paying them. This did originate as a volunteer program, and which I would say really helped the program evolve into what it is today, because the key here is that the local agricultural schools require our students to fulfill what they call supervised agricultural experience hours, and they have a certain amount of those hours every year to fulfill, which helps drive the students' motivation into this program, especially within our field of conservation and natural resources.
I'm just going to read a little bit off of your website, which I came across, and I absolutely love this, and it's to do with the junior forest techs. And it says, for a junior forest technician, a mid-morning snack might look like a handful of freshly picked wineberries. As we worked through the grounds of the bent of the River Audubon Centre, we paused here and there to pull the brightly coloured berries from the brambles that wove through the underbush. It's just a lovely picture, but also kids eating berries. Talk to us about that, because it evokes so many images. And I think, again, we want to get across what it is that these young people are being taught by experts like you.
The first thing that comes to mind is the wineberries, and that is actually a non-native invasive plant species. that we encounter here on the property, and that's just one of many. And that's part of their job duties, and part of their learning is to understand the effect of these non-native plants on our local ecosystems. Again, that's the first thing that came to mind was they were eating them because they were trying to, one, they have learned how to identify that plant. They learned how to manage that plant. They understand why it is invasive to our area, and they're eating them not only because they taste good, but they're preventing the seed dispersal.
Let me turn to Will. Will, you are responsible for the wildlife guards. This is yet another youth employment program. Tell us what the differences are between that and, again, where you draw these students from. And I believe, again, you also pay the students for this as well.
Exactly. Whereas the junior forest technicians are primarily doing work in our sort of more inland, more forested habitats in Connecticut, the Wildlife Guards program is focused on coastal stewardship, trying to promote and ensure that seabirds and shorebirds that are calling Connecticut home have available habitat for nesting, feeding, and nesting habitat as well. And so one of the ways that we do that with the wildlife guards is that we partner very closely with several public school districts along the coastline in Bridgeport, Connecticut, West Haven, Connecticut, and Stratford, Connecticut. We work closely with teachers to identify and interview students who are interested in the sciences, that are interested in wildlife conservation, and then we're able to provide them a paid job in conservation. For many of them, it's the first paid job that they ever have. Obviously, there are the conservation components and the science components to the program, but for a lot of these students, it's a job preparedness program just as much, where students for the first time are learning how to fill out and organize a timesheet. They're learning how to work as part of a larger team. They're learning how to communicate effectively and professionally with the public. And we see that as being just as important for them to be gaining those skills as much as it is to be learning about a lot of the plants and animals that call Connecticut home.
Give us a sense, if you would, Will, of some of the reactions or some of the comments that you get or have had from some of these young people when they suddenly realize exactly what is out there on their doorstep, when they're given the privilege to work with professionals like yourself and Glenn and the rest of the team. How do they react to that?
I think within the first week of the program when we're training these students, a lot of them had no idea that there were state and federally listed bird species living and calling the towns and cities that these students come from home. And over the course of the season, we see an overwhelming majority of participants reporting that they want to remain involved and remain participating with Audubon outside of their summer season. A majority are reporting an interest in coming back for the subsequent season. And through a lot of testing and surveying that we do with our participants, we also see a clear objective advancement in knowledge as well as personal interests related to wildlife conservation. So I guess we're really seeing it as opening the doors for a lot of these students, that there is a potential career path in wildlife conservation. Because to paint a pretty broad picture, the conservation movement probably is not going to be successful unless we can willingly and meaningfully engage with this next generation and get them interested in science. And one of the best ways to do that is to make conservation local and relevant to these students. And that's how you get them interested and involved.
Yeah, also like hands-on. Everything is hands-on. This isn't like classroom stuff, although I'm guessing maybe there might be a little bit. I'm guessing the majority of this is hands-on, out there in the fresh air, getting your hands in the dirt, etc., and seeing this up close and personal.
Absolutely. It's primarily in the field job for these students. Yes, we have opportunities where we do these off-site trips where they visit a state park or they visit a nature center or perhaps another Audubon property to learn about the different facets of conservation. But we're getting these students in the field, binoculars in hand, collecting data on these bird species for state biologists and other Audubon scientists.
I want to go back to Glenn and ask you this. Where you are primarily based, Glenn, up in the Southbury area, and you got hit really hard recently with the floods. What sort of effect did that have on Bent of the River Audubon Centre?
Initially, it shut us down. The damage was very extensive within our watershed. Just at our center, it blew out about a 30-foot section of our driveway, and then many trails were damaged. There was no way to prepare for that amount of water in that short of time. But I do have to say, one of the most positive outcomes of this was shown through the support of our surrounding community and everyone involved at our center.
What sort of effects have you seen on the actual nature sanctuary itself? Because I'm guessing that must have got hit as well, other than just the drive washing out. Did it have some really marked effects on the sanctuary itself and the wildlife, etc., that's inhabiting it there?
Yeah, two parts to that. Obviously, it affected our trails. We've had some significant landslides, and we're located in this low area along these surrounding ridge lines. So all the water ran down to us, and we're centered. We're located just along the Pomperaug River, which flows through the Houstonic River watershed. That's one thing that Audubon is really diving into is climate resiliency and trying to predict how we can manage more extreme weather. And again, we are chipping away at all of the damage at this point, and with the help of our local community.
Will, getting back to you, before we started recording the interview, we were having a chat and you were talking about salt marshes. The first time I met you was fairly recently when I was covering a story at Hammonasset Park, which is just a beautiful, one of many beautiful parts, obviously, of Connecticut. But salt marshes, that's another big thing. Talk about that and why we need to be looking after those in particular and what they do, obviously, for birds and wildlife.
Salt marshes are just these absolutely amazing niche habitats that I don't know what we currently have in Connecticut is a fraction of what was here historically if we're going back many years pre-human contact in the area. So we really have a fraction of existing salt marshes left, providing such niche habitat for species like the salt marsh sparrow, like diamondback terrapins, a variety of other long-legged waders as well. The salt marsh has so many functions just beyond being places for animals to call home. They act as a natural barrier for storm surges during extreme weather events. They are sequestering enormous amounts of carbon within the peat layer of the marsh as well. And also with these thriving salt marshes, you do have that ecotourism component where areas that have these bountiful salt marshes, people from all over the state are going to be traveling to visit, to bird, to passively recreate, and then we'll also be spending time in those local communities helping with the going to those businesses as well.
But I can tell you what we work on at the bent of the river, and most of our habitat work here is what we call early successional habitat, which is your regenerating forests, which is being threatened not only in Connecticut, but in New England to overdevelopment. Our forests are very fragmented, but even loss of farming has affected that type of habitat, those open areas. And birds look for those areas while they're migrating. They look for those openings in the canopy because they know it's a really great food source and to fuel up not only for our nesting birds, but for migrating birds along their journey. So we have four focal species, our blue-winged warbler, prairie warbler, field sparrow, and indigo bunting. And we actually use those birds to help us, to tell us how to prescribe future management. And the many volunteers, along with our junior forest technicians, have a role within that collection of data.
As I said, looking at the organization, what it does, and these youth programs, it's just scratching the surface of so many things that obviously that you do to help look after so much here, obviously in the state of Connecticut. When it comes back to these youth programs, the hope, obviously, I'm guessing, is to put a spark in these young people that maybe they'll be future staff members, scientists working for your organization, Glenn.
Absolutely. And I would like to echo what Will was saying as these programs creating these career opportunities and being somewhat of a gateway and a career pathway. And that's something we found within the junior forest technician program. As I mentioned, it started as a volunteer program, just helping us with some habitat management and daily job duties within the sanctuary. But I realized the impact that working with local professionals within the field had on the students. And we've really had some great success stories in the past of multiple students continuing their, furthering their education within the field of sciences and even seeking jobs and careers. And I'm sure Will can agree with what I'm about to say. The format of our program, we do try to create this cycle through the years of our students becoming crew leaders and enhancing those job opportunities as they mature and grow.
Yeah, Will, tell me, obviously, as one of the senior coordinators, as we said, of the wildlife guards, what does it mean to you? We've heard from you and Glenn some comments and reactions that you get from these young people, but what does it mean to you as a professional?
To me, it's just a great feeling seeing some of these students grow over the years, coming back season after season, becoming more involved in the program, taking on even leadership roles too. I employed 6 college-age crew leaders this year to run our 3 wildlife guard crews all over the state. And half of the crew leaders were former wildlife guard alumni. In fact, a third of the program in 2024 returned from 2023. So be able to have that retention in the program is incredibly meaningful. And I think we achieve that by one, providing these meaningful and interesting opportunities through our youth employment programs, but the fact that these are paid opportunities. We're paying state of Connecticut minimum wage to these students at Audubon. We don't do unpaid internships. We don't do these summer stipends. We are paying these students a wage. And since many of the students that participate in the wildlife guard programs come from either distressed municipalities or environmental justice communities as designated by the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, to be able to bring home that paycheck and help support their families is extremely meaningful. Perhaps if this was a volunteer only program or if it was unpaid or we paid less through stipends, we wouldn't be able to reach out and connect to as many of the youth as we have been able to today.
We've come to the end of the interview. It's been great talking to both of you, and thank you so much for sharing this information with us and obviously with the listeners as well. As we said, it does depend to a certain degree where you are based, obviously, in the state of Connecticut for these programs. But if there is anybody out there listening that is interested, is there a way for them maybe to get in contact with either of you?
Yeah, absolutely. You could visit our website at the bent of the river audubon.org, or even you could probably find my email directly through that website as well.
And would that be for both the wildlife guards and the junior forest techs?
No, that would be for the junior forest technicians.
Okay. And then Will, for wildlife guards, just quickly tell us what sort of area you have to be in to possibly be included in becoming a wildlife guard.
So student participants in their high school student participants in the wildlife guard program have to live in either Stratford, Bridgeport, or West Haven, Connecticut. However, there is no residency requirement to become a crew leader.
Excellent. Gentlemen, as I said, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to both of you, listening to the passion that you both have, obviously, not only in the jobs that you do every day, but to these young people that you're mentoring. And as you said, Will, who you've already seen become to like crew members as well. So we thank you and obviously the continuing work of Audubon Connecticut. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Appreciate you having us, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
And if you want to find out more about the work and resources of Audubon Connecticut, then visit their website at ct.audubon.org. Connecticut East This Week is made possible by the Connecticut Technology Council, recognizing STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as critical to Connecticut's economy, providing jobs, careers, and business opportunities. Help celebrate the leadership of 45 outstanding women in STEM as we honor them at the 19th Annual Women of Innovation Awards event on Tuesday, October 22nd in Branford. Hear winners' inspiring stories and how these dynamic women are leading the way forward. Learn more at ct.gov/women of innovation. Nutmeg Pharmacy, reminding you it's flu season. Get your flu, COVID, and RSV vaccinations now and protect you and your loved ones. We are a full-service, independent pharmacy group providing prescriptions, over-the-counter medications, and more, plus free local delivery from our locations in Higganum, Moodus, Centerbrook, Taftville, and New London. Find out more about us and our services at nutmegpharmacy.com. And Media Here and Now is a full-service content creation agency based in Eastern Connecticut and producing video, audio, podcasts, and digital content for social media, online, and broadcast use for all types of businesses, organizations, and nonprofits. If you need a new company video or radio advert or want to start your own podcast, then get in touch and see how we can help you at mediahereandnow.com. Time now for a look at other stories making the headlines this week. Over a year in the making, the 119K Commission released its comprehensive 120-page report recently detailing actions on how to reconnect 60,000 of the roughly 119,000 disconnected youth in Connecticut. The report, titled Young People First, a Bold Plan to Address Connecticut's Statewide Crisis, is the result of the findings in Dalio Education's original report, The Unspoken Crisis, that identified about 119,000 young people aged 16 through 26 and in all 169 of Connecticut's municipalities who have become disconnected from education and employment. They live in poverty, often facing food insecurity or homelessness, which make it difficult to stay in school. Some struggle with mental health conditions or addiction, or their parents struggle with the same. Some must care for siblings while parents work, or they are simply without parents or guardians. The new report says the cost for reforming the situation will cost the state around $150 million to launch and around $450 million annually moving forward. The plan identified the need for major school policy reform, increasing school and educator capacity, creating employment programs, and building on the capacity of non-profit youth service providers to help deliver services and programs across the state. 1,000 Connecticut homeowners whose property had a crumbling concrete foundation because of the mineral pyrite have now received help and a new foundation for their home. That's according to the Connecticut Foundation Solutions Indemnity Company, a captive insurance company that was set up in 2019 by the state to help deal with the problem. Michael Maglaris is the superintendent of the insurance company and says with a finite amount of properties affected in the northeast of the state, he believes the problem could be coming to an end soon.
I'm predicting that the top of this crisis, in other words, the outer edge of the number of families affected by this terrible crisis, is probably between 3,700 and 4,000. Right now, we have 2,396 active claimants, of which 1,000 are completed. We're beginning to see some light at the end of the tunnel as we begin to move, I think, towards the end of the crisis. And what I'm predicting is going to be 6 to 7 years.
Since 2019, the captive insurer has paid out over $153 million for new foundations, with an average foundation replacement costing around $150,000. But Maglaris says they still need millions of dollars more yet to bring the crisis this to an end.
I have a request in to state government and to many of the legislators that we deal with for 160 million more. What I've said is if we can get 160 million, that's 4 more years of bonding at $25 million a year, plus an extension, another 60 million of the Healthy Homes funding, I'm going to put this crisis to rest. I'm predicting that's exactly what it's going to take.
The National Community Pharmacist Association says a new survey by them shows more than 90% of the country's independent pharmacies say they may not sell lower-priced drugs for Medicare Part D patients starting in 2026. The NCPA says 10 drugs, that include those for diabetes, blood clots and heart disease, have been negotiated down in price by the federal government, but they failed to take into account the cost to pharmacies to purchase and prescribe them. Nathan Tinker is the CEO of the Connecticut Pharmacist Association and says part of the problem are middlemen known as pharmacy benefit managers or PBMs who control the cost and reimbursements of drugs in this country.
PBMs have made it extremely difficult for independent pharmacies particularly to make money on prescriptions. And, when you're being reimbursed 80 cents on the dollar of what it costs you to buy the drug wholesale, there's no way that you can maintain a business at that level.
Tinker says Connecticut passed legislation a few years ago to force PBMs to be more transparent in their dealings with pharmacies, but says the state isn't enforcing the law.
Do they try to save and promote small independent pharmacies and create better access for patients? Or do they listen to, let's face it, major employers in the state who may have a different approach? So I don't envy Connecticut's agencies and legislature on this front, but they have to do a much, much better job at looking at PBM transparency and how it is actually affecting patients in their districts and in their towns.
The NCPA says the 10 lower-priced drugs will cost pharmacies around $27,000 to stock. The NCPA says unless the federal government fixes the reimbursement issue, their efforts to reduce prescription drug prices for consumers in this country will fail. EastCon, a regional educational service centre and non-profit that serves Eastern Connecticut, has unveiled a new mobile manufacturing lab. The groundbreaking initiative will help to bring the future of the industry directly to students at their schools and to education and job fairs. Eric Protoulis is EastCon's executive director and said the new mobile lab opens up a whole new world to young people for future career and job opportunities.
The mobile lab is more than just a classroom on wheels. It is a doorway into a universe of possibilities. A universe where students, especially those in grades 5 through 8, will have the chance to discover the incredible opportunities that exist in the world of manufacturing. From hands-on experience with cutting-edge technology to the exposure to skills that will shape their future careers. The lab is designed to ignite curiosity and excitement.
The lab has been made possible through partnerships with Electric Boat, who manufacture submarines in southeastern Connecticut, and the Eastern Connecticut Workforce Investment Board, or EWIP, who are placing people of all ages into manufacturing jobs in the eastern region through their manufacturing pipeline and youth initiatives. Paul Lavoie is the state of Connecticut's chief manufacturing officer and said young people need to be exposed more to the variety of different manufacturing jobs that exist today.
In one of our technical high schools, you can pick your discipline when you enroll. And 2 kids picked precision machining. They have 25 slots. Then they do discovery days where the kids can go around and spend time in each one of those areas and decide. 75 kids wanted the precision manufacturing program. So that proves to us that when we show kids the opportunities, when we show kids the types of jobs that we have, we open up a whole new world for them.
Lavoie said research that his department had undertaken showed that most young people in the state have a zero perception about manufacturing, believing that items appear at an Amazon warehouse and then get shipped to their homes with no idea how they are made. That's all from us for this edition. Do send us your questions and story ideas to the show via our website at connecticut-east.com or Facebook or Twitter at Connecticut East and on Instagram at Connecticut East This Week. And you can listen to the show again on our social platforms, on demand, and by asking your smart speaker to play Connecticut East This Week podcast. And please like, follow, and share on your social media too. I'm Brian Scott Smith. Thank you for listening.